HOA, Karen trapped my disabled daughter in her own car while she was still in her wheelchair. It was an ordinary afternoon, the kind where the warm sun filtered through the trees, casting soft shadows on the quiet street. Anna Westbrook sat on her porch, the light breeze ruffling her hair as she sipped her coffee. Lily, her disabled daughter, was beside her, content in her wheelchair, the two of them simply enjoying the peace of their front yard. For a moment, it felt like they could take a breath. Finally, after weeks of stress, doctor's appointments, and the hustle of everyday life. In this small moment of tranquility, everything seemed as it should be. They were home, together, and nothing could touch them here. But little did Anna know, this fragile peace was about to be shattered by someone who believed she could control it all. The moment Jessica Miller stepped onto the sidewalk, the quiet of the neighborhood changed. Anna hadn't seen her approach, but the familiar, forceful presence of the HOA, Karen, was unmistakable. Jessica, always perfectly put together, stood with a look of disapproval plastered across her face. Her sharp eyes scanned Anna and Lily with the cold precision of someone who believed their authority was unchallenged. She was the type of woman who never let a rule go unchallenged, who believed her way was the only way. And when she didn't get her way, the consequences were swift. Anna's heart dropped slightly, sensing that this encounter wasn't going to be a simple exchange. Jessica's footsteps clicked purposefully as she moved toward them, her gaze fixed. She was here with a purpose, but what that purpose was, Anna couldn't yet know. "Anna," Jessica said, her voice laced with a hint of superiority, "I need to speak with you about something very serious." The words felt like a warning more than an invitation to conversation. Anna set her coffee down slowly, trying to gauge the situation. "What's going on, Jessica?" she asked, keeping her tone neutral, despite the tension beginning to build in her chest. Jessica glanced over at Lily, then back at Anna, her lips curling slightly. "You're violating HOA rules. The regulations clearly state that no vehicle is allowed to block the sidewalk, and it's not even supposed to be here in the first place. Your daughter is using it as a space to rest." She motioned to the space beside them, where Lily's wheelchair was positioned, just as it had been for the past hour. Anna's stomach tightened. It took a moment for her to process what Jessica was saying. "My daughter's in a wheelchair. This is her home. She's not blocking anything," Anna said, keeping her voice even, though her patience was thinning. Jessica wasn't finished. "Rules are rules, Anna," she said, crossing her arms over her chest. "You need to move that wheelchair immediately, or I will be forced to report you. We can't have people thinking it's okay to break the rules just because they feel entitled." Her eyes were now locked on Anna, as if daring her to challenge her authority. Anna's heart pounded in her chest, a mix of confusion and anger bubbling up inside her. She wanted to snap back, to tell Jessica how ridiculous this all was, but she couldn't let herself be dragged into a confrontation she knew would escalate. The HOA had always been a thorn in her side, but this was something else entirely. This wasn't just about rules. This was about power. Before Anna could respond, Jessica's next words cut through the air. "I'm going to have to call the HOA board about this. You'll see, this isn't just going to go away. You'll be hearing from them soon." Anna looked at Lily, whose face had paled slightly, confusion and fear starting to cloud her expression. She could see Jessica's eyes now, full of judgment, as if this was all just part of her personal crusade. It didn't matter to Jessica that Anna and Lily had lived in this house for years, that this driveway was a sanctuary for them both. As Jessica turned on her heel and marched away, Anna's stomach twisted. The power struggle had just begun, but she would never allow Jessica or anyone else to treat her daughter like this. Anna knew this wasn't the last time they would cross paths. Jessica had made it clear she was going to make their lives miserable, but Anna wasn't going down without a fight. Not for her daughter, not for their peace. And just like that, the calm was broken. Anna Westbrook had always been a fighter. She wasn't the kind of woman who let life's challenges keep her down, and raising a daughter with disabilities had only strengthened that resolve. From the moment Lily was born, Anna knew that life wouldn't be easy, but she also knew it would be filled with love. The diagnosis came early. Lily would never walk, never run, never dance with the wind in her hair like other kids. But what doctors couldn't measure was the heart of this little girl. Lily's spirit was unbreakable, and that fire in her eyes had always been a beacon for Anna. Anna wasn't just Lily's mother, she was her protector, her champion, and her best friend. She had left a promising career to care for her daughter full time. Every day was an act of devotion. But despite the challenges they faced, Anna was always determined to keep their life as normal as possible. She created a home for Lily that was a sanctuary, a safe place where they could escape from the world's harshness. She built ramps, adapted their home, and made sure every inch of their space was accessible to Lily, ensuring she had the freedom to move, even if only within the confines of their home. To Anna, there was nothing more precious than her daughter's comfort and happiness. Lily, though quiet and introspective, was wise beyond her years. Despite the limitations her body imposed, she had a sharp mind and a heart full of dreams. She loved to draw, her talent evident even at a young age, and spent hours sketching animals, landscapes, and even her dreams of a world without boundaries. But the world outside often failed to see her for what she truly was, a vibrant, creative soul trapped inside a body that didn't work the way it was supposed to. Lily didn't mind. She had Anna, and that was enough. Her wheelchair was a part of her, not a limitation. Then there was Jessica Miller, the neighbor who lived 2 houses down. Jessica had always been a thorn in Anna's side, someone who reveled in the minutiae of rules and regulations. She was the typical HOA, Karen, the type of person who found purpose in policing others, in ensuring everyone else followed the rules to the letter, even when those rules were, quite frankly, arbitrary. Jessica was the head of the HOA, a self-appointed authority, in a world she believed was full of chaos. In her eyes, there was only one way to live, her way. Jessica had no real understanding of Anna's life or the challenges she faced. She had no children of her own and no experience with disability. To her, everyone was just a rule to be enforced, and anyone who didn't comply was simply in the wrong. Her interactions with Anna had always been cold, distant, and patronizing. But recently, things had started to escalate. Jessica had taken a special interest in Anna's home, often complaining about minor infractions that she insisted went against HOA regulations. The complaints were never major, but they were frequent. Jessica's arrival today was no accident. She had been watching from her window, waiting for the right moment to strike. It wasn't about the rules, it was about control. Jessica didn't like Anna's defiance. She didn't like that Anna lived her life according to her own terms, and more than anything, she didn't like the idea that someone like Anna could raise a child in a wheelchair with so much dignity and love. To Jessica, it wasn't just about the rules. It was about power. As Jessica stood on Anna's driveway, her eyes scanning the scene like a predator observing her prey, Anna could feel the coldness in the air between them. Anna had spent her entire life fighting for her daughter, for their right to exist without judgment, without interference. But now it felt like she was fighting something bigger, something that had the power to break them if she didn't stand up. Jessica wasn't just challenging their lifestyle. She was threatening their sanctuary, their home. And that was something Anna would never allow. Lily, from her position in the wheelchair, watched the exchange unfold. She had always been perceptive, and though she didn't understand the full extent of the confrontation, she could sense her mother's unease. She had grown up seeing Anna handle difficult situations with a calm, collected grace. But today, even Lily could tell that something was different. The stakes were higher, and Jessica Miller wasn't just a nuisance anymore. She was a real threat. Anna could see the slight furrow of worry on Lily's face, and her heart ached. It was the last thing she wanted to do. To show Lily that there were people who could make them feel small, inferior, or unwelcome in their own home. But Anna knew that Lily was strong, stronger than anyone, including Jessica. She had to believe that. With a deep breath, Anna turned to face Jessica, her body stiffening with resolve. She wasn't going to let Jessica take away the peace they had fought so hard for. She wasn't going to let anyone make her daughter feel like she didn't belong in the world. "I don't know what you think you're doing, Jessica," Anna said, her voice steady despite the pounding of her heart. "But you've crossed the line." Jessica's eyes narrowed, but Anna could see the flicker of uncertainty in them. For the first time, Jessica realized that Anna wasn't afraid, and that realization made her nervous. But Anna wasn't done yet. She knew what she had to do. It was time for the fight to begin, and this time she wouldn't back down. Not for Lily, not for herself, not for their home. The tension between Anna and Jessica was palpable. Anna stood her ground, the weight of every decision she had made in her life hanging in the balance. Lily, who had always been Anna's anchor, was the quiet strength behind her, even as she sat silently in her wheelchair. Anna could feel the sting of Jessica's judgment in her words, but she wouldn't let it show. She couldn't afford to. Not when it was her daughter's peace, her daughter's safety at stake. "Look, Jessica," Anna began, her voice unwavering. "I don't know what you're trying to prove here, but this is my daughter's home. We've lived here for years. We've never violated any rules. You don't get to come onto my property and tell me how to live my life, especially not when you don't know anything about the challenges we face every single day." Jessica's lips tightened and her posture stiffened. She wasn't used to being challenged, but Anna's defiance only seemed to fuel her desire for control. "You're being unreasonable, Anna," she said, her tone dripping with condescension. "The rules are the rules, and if you can't follow them, there will be consequences. It's my responsibility to make sure this neighborhood stays in line. If that means calling the HOA board, then so be it." Anna felt the heat of frustration rise in her chest, but she bit her tongue. She wasn't going to give Jessica the satisfaction of knowing how deeply this was affecting her. She had learned over the years that the more she reacted, the more Jessica would push. She needed to stay calm, to keep control of the situation. The last thing Anna wanted was to escalate things, but Jessica's unrelenting pursuit was wearing her down. "What exactly do you expect to happen, Jessica?" Anna asked, her voice a little sharper this time. "Are you going to report me to the board for parking my daughter's wheelchair in our driveway? Is that what you're trying to do?" Jessica's eyes glinted with something darker now, a glimmer of triumph in her gaze. "You don't seem to get it, do you?" she said, a cold edge to her voice. "You've made your bed, Anna, and now you'll have to lie in it. The HOA will be taking action, whether you like it or not." With that, Jessica turned and walked off, her steps purposeful, her back straight, as if she had won the battle. But Anna wasn't ready to let it go. She couldn't. This wasn't just about following rules anymore. It was about standing up to a bully, about ensuring that her daughter would never feel ashamed of who she was or where she belonged. As soon as Jessica was out of sight, Anna's mind began to race. What was she supposed to do now? Should she just wait for the HOA board to come to her? Should she prepare for the fight she knew was coming? She turned to look at Lily, whose face mirrored the confusion and worry Anna was feeling. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart," Anna whispered, kneeling beside her. She gently cupped Lily's face in her hands, as if trying to shield her from the pain of the situation. "This is not your fault. You didn't do anything wrong." Lily looked up at her mother with wide eyes. "Mom," she said softly, her voice shaking slightly, "what if they make us leave?" Anna's heart clenched. She could see the worry in Lily's eyes, the fear that someone could take their home away from them. "They won't make us leave," Anna promised, even though part of her wasn't entirely sure. "We're not going anywhere. This is our home. We have every right to be here, and I'll fight for that. I won't let them take it from us." But deep down, Anna knew this wasn't going to be easy. Jessica's presence was just the beginning of a much larger struggle. The HOA had power, more power than she'd ever realized, and if they were determined to go after her, she'd have to fight harder than she ever had before. Later that afternoon, Anna received a phone call from the HOA board. They'd scheduled a meeting to discuss the violation. The message was clear: they weren't going to let this go. It was now a war of wills. As Anna prepared for the upcoming meeting, she felt the weight of the situation pressing down on her. She spent hours going over the HOA's rules and regulations, trying to find any loophole she could exploit. She contacted a lawyer hoping to find some legal protection, but it was clear that the HOA's actions were, at least for the moment, within the bounds of the rules. She couldn't understand how something as small as where Lily parked her wheelchair could escalate into this kind of attack. It felt like an attack on her family's way of life, on her ability to care for her daughter in peace. And she wasn't about to let Jessica or anyone else destroy that. As the days passed, the pressure mounted. Anna kept a calm exterior for Lily's sake, but inside, she was bracing herself for the worst. She knew that Jessica wouldn't stop until she had won, until she had driven them out of their home. But Anna wouldn't back down. She couldn't. Not when it came to protecting Lily, not when it came to their safety and their right to exist in this space without fear. The day of the HOA meeting arrived. Anna took a deep breath, looked at Lily, and gave her a reassuring smile. "We're going to handle this together," she said. Lily nodded, her eyes still filled with worry. But there was something else there now, determination. She was just like her mother in that way. As Anna stepped out the door, she knew that this was just the beginning. Whatever happened next, she was ready. She would fight for Lily, for their home, for the life they had built together. And no one, especially not Jessica Miller, was going to take that away from them. The meeting was held in the large, sterile conference room at the HOA office, a place that felt more like a courtroom than a community gathering. Anna's heart pounded in her chest as she sat down at the table across from Jessica Miller and several members of the HOA board. The room was tense, thick with an undercurrent of hostility. Jessica, of course, sat with her arms crossed and a smug expression on her face, as though she had already won. But Anna wasn't going to let that happen. Not today. Anna had spent the past few days gathering evidence. She'd collected letters from neighbors who supported her, pointing out that Lily had never violated any HOA rules, that her presence on the driveway had never been a problem before. She even managed to dig up the HOA's own guidelines, showing that no regulation explicitly prohibited Lily from using the driveway in her wheelchair. Anna wasn't just going to sit there and let Jessica dictate the narrative. She had a plan, and she was ready to fight. The board members, seated around the table, glanced at each other as Anna presented her case. One of them, an older woman named Mrs. Stevenson, raised her hand to stop Anna. "Ms. Westbrook," she said, her voice stern, "we understand the difficulties your daughter faces, but you must also understand that the HOA has rules in place to maintain order in this community. We are all bound by these rules, and right now you are in violation." Anna's stomach twisted at her words. It was clear that Mrs. Stevenson, like Jessica, wasn't concerned with Lily's needs or her rights. This was all about power and control. But Anna wasn't intimidated. "I understand the rules," she said, her voice calm but firm. "But these rules aren't written in stone. They're meant to serve the community, not tear it apart. And my daughter's right to be here in her own home should never be up for debate." Jessica smiled, but it was a cold, calculated smile. "You may have your supporters, Anna, but the fact remains that your daughter was blocking the driveway. The rules are clear. You've been warned several times, and now the board has to take action." Anna's blood boiled, but she forced herself to stay composed. "I didn't block anything." Lily was sitting in her wheelchair, enjoying the fresh air, just like anyone else would be on their front steps. She wasn't obstructing anything. And if you're going to punish us for this, then I want to know what kind of community this really is. Jessica's eyes narrowed, but she didn't respond. Anna turned to the rest of the board members, trying to gauge their reactions. They seemed conflicted, some of them looking down at their papers, others exchanging uneasy glances. They hadn't expected this much resistance. They hadn't expected Anna to come prepared. The room fell into a tense silence as the board members deliberated among themselves. Anna could feel her pulse racing in her ears, but she kept her face calm, her body still. She had to let them see that she wasn't going to back down, no matter how much pressure Jessica or anyone else applied. Finally, Mrs. Stevenson spoke again, her voice cutting through the silence. "We have considered your arguments, Ms. Westbrook. However, we still believe the violation stands. The decision of this board is final." The words hit Anna like a slap in the face. For a moment, her world seemed to tilt. Was this really happening? Was she really about to lose this fight? But then she looked at Lily, who was sitting next to her eyes wide with anxiety. She was watching Anna, waiting for her to say something, to do something, and in that moment, Anna knew she couldn't let this go. "No," Anna said, her voice sharp and clear. "This isn't over." Jessica raised an eyebrow, clearly surprised by Anna's defiance. "What do you mean?" "The decision is final, Anna. You can't just—" "No," Anna repeated, standing up now, her voice louder, more confident. "You don't get to take away our peace like this. You don't get to make my daughter feel like she doesn't belong here. I won't let you." The room fell silent again, and Anna could feel the weight of all their eyes on her. But this time, she didn't falter. She was standing for something bigger than herself. She was standing for her daughter, for her family, and for the home they had built. She wouldn't let Jessica or the HOA tear that down. "I'm taking this to court," Anna said, her voice resolute. "If you think you can push me around like this, I'll show you just how far I'll go to protect my daughter. I'm not backing down." Jessica looked at her, her face flushing with anger. "You think the courts will side with you? You think you'll win?" Anna met her gaze, her eyes steady. "I think the courts will side with what's right. I think they'll see that this isn't about rules, Jessica. This is about power, and it's about time someone took a stand against people like you." There was a long pause, and for a moment no one spoke. The board members seemed unsure of how to proceed, caught between the letter of the law and the growing tension in the room. Finally, Mrs. Stevenson cleared her throat. "Fine," she said, her voice tight. "You want to take this to court? We'll see you there. But make no mistake, Ms. Westbrook, this fight isn't over." Anna didn't respond. She didn't need to. She knew what she had to do. And with that, she walked out of the room, her head held high, leaving Jessica and the rest of the board to stew in the consequences of their own actions. As she stepped into the parking lot, Anna's phone buzzed. It was a message from her lawyer confirming that the court date had been set. She glanced down at her phone and felt a small smile tug at her lips. This was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning. The days following the HOA meeting were a blur of preparation, tension, and quiet reflection. Anna had done the impossible. She had stood her ground, refused to let Jessica and the HOA push her around, and now she was on her way to fight for the one thing that mattered more than anything else: Lily's right to live in peace in their own home, without fear of being persecuted. But the calm after the storm didn't last long. Despite her best efforts to stay focused, Anna couldn't help but feel the weight of the situation pressing down on her. She had no idea how the court battle would unfold. She didn't even know if they had a real chance of winning. But what she did know was that she couldn't back down. Not for Lily. Not for their home. The first few days after the meeting were spent consulting with her lawyer, preparing for the legal battle ahead. They worked tirelessly to gather more evidence, to build a case that would show the HOA's actions weren't just unjust, they were a violation of their rights. Anna called more neighbors, some who had witnessed Jessica's overreach, and others who had seen the way Lily had always used the driveway without issue. Each conversation made her feel a little more hopeful, but also reminded her just how deeply entrenched the problem was. Jessica had power in this community, and she wasn't going to give it up without a fight. But as the days dragged on, Anna began to notice something strange. Neighbors who had once avoided her now greeted her with warmth and sympathy. People who had never gotten involved in community matters suddenly spoke out, offering their support and words of encouragement. The community, though fractured by Jessica's divisiveness, was beginning to come together. Anna's quiet resolve, her refusal to back down, had sparked something in others. They, too, were tired of being bullied by someone who thought their power meant they could control everything. One morning, as Anna sat down for coffee with Lily, she received an unexpected message. It was from a woman named Claire, someone Anna had never met personally but knew by reputation. Claire had lived in the neighborhood for years, and while she wasn't particularly active in the HOA, she had always been outspoken about fairness and standing up for what was right. Her message was short and to the point. I want to help. I'll testify in court for you. Anna blinked, staring at the message in disbelief. The people who had once stayed silent were finally speaking up. The tide was turning, and though the battle ahead was still daunting, Anna couldn't ignore the feeling that they weren't alone anymore. She wasn't alone. The preparations for the court case intensified. The night before the trial, Anna couldn't sleep. She paced back and forth in the living room, her mind racing through all the arguments, the pieces of evidence, the people who were coming to support them. Lily had already gone to bed, exhausted from a long day, but Anna couldn't rest. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Jessica's face, smug and triumphant, telling her that she didn't belong in this neighborhood, that Lily didn't deserve a place at the table. But Anna wasn't going to let Jessica win. Not now. Not ever. Not when everything they had fought for was on the line. The next morning, Anna and her lawyer made their way to the courthouse. The air was thick with tension. They walked into the courtroom, and Anna felt a chill run down her spine. But when she looked at the faces of the people sitting in the audience, she saw something she hadn't expected. There was support there, people from the neighborhood who had come to show they stood behind Anna and Lily. Claire was there, sitting in the front row, and several others whom Anna had spoken to over the last few days. Their presence was a silent message to Jessica and the HOA board. They were no longer going to allow their community to be divided by one person's power trip. As the case unfolded, Anna's lawyer presented their evidence, the testimony of neighbors, the HOA's own guidelines showing no clear violation of the rules, and the legal precedent that supported their right to live freely in their own home. The opposing side, represented by Jessica and her lawyer, argued that the HOA had every right to enforce the rules and that Anna was simply making excuses. But their arguments felt hollow, their tactics desperate. It became clear that Jessica's overreach, her personal vendetta against Anna and Lily, was the real issue. The HOA's actions weren't about maintaining the neighborhood. They were about punishing someone who had dared to stand up for herself. In the final moments of the trial, Anna felt a surge of determination. This was it, the moment when everything would change. She took the stand, her voice steady as she recounted the events of the past few weeks, how her family had been harassed, how her daughter had been trapped and mistreated simply for existing. She spoke with the raw, unfiltered emotion of a mother defending her child. It wasn't about the rules anymore. It wasn't about power. It was about fairness, about justice, and about doing what was right. And then, after hours of deliberation, the judge delivered the verdict. In a ruling that would send shockwaves through the community, the judge found in Anna's favor. The HOA's actions were deemed unjustified, and Jessica Miller was ordered to cease her harassment of Anna and Lily. Furthermore, the court issued a temporary injunction that prevented Jessica from pursuing further action against them. It was a victory, but it was more than just that. It was a message, one that resonated through the entire community. Anna had stood up, not just for herself and her daughter, but for everyone who had ever been silenced or bullied by those in power. As they left the courthouse, Anna felt the weight of the world lift from her shoulders. She turned to Lily, who was smiling up at her, her eyes bright with relief. "We did it, sweetheart," Anna said, her voice thick with emotion. "We did it." Lily wrapped her arms around Anna, holding on tightly. "You're the best, Mom," she whispered. "You always fight for me." Anna smiled, tears welling in her eyes. "I'll always fight for you. And no one, not Jessica, not anyone, will ever take our home away from us." It had been a long and exhausting battle, but they had won, together. The victory in court was a turning point, but the road ahead was far from easy. The battle against the HOA had left Anna and Lily emotionally drained, but it had also left them stronger, more united than ever. The court ruling had given them the peace they so desperately needed. But the scars of the battle lingered in the corners of their lives, a constant reminder of how far they had come and the forces they had fought. The community, however, had been changed. News of the court ruling spread quickly, and while some of Jessica Miller's supporters in the neighborhood grumbled privately, the majority of the residents stood in solidarity with Anna and Lily. People who had previously been too afraid to speak out against Jessica's iron-fisted control were now coming forward, voicing their concerns and offering their support. In the days following the court case, the HOA's influence began to wane. The board members who had once sided with Jessica now found themselves questioning their own actions. The power imbalance that Jessica had so carefully cultivated was crumbling, and with it, her grip on the community began to loosen. As the dust settled, Anna knew that their lives could never return to the simplicity they once had. The battle with the HOA had opened her eyes to just how fragile their peace had been, but it had also shown her the power of standing up for what was right. She had learned that sometimes the fight wasn't just about winning, it was about sending a message. And that message had been heard loud and clear. Anna spent the following weeks working to rebuild the community, slowly but surely. She began organizing gatherings and events that brought people together, encouraging them to voice their concerns and to actively participate in shaping the future of their neighborhood. She even met with the new members of the HOA board, encouraging them to focus on creating a more inclusive and supportive environment for everyone, not just those who could wield the most influence. And while Jessica Miller's reign had come to an end, Anna knew the fight for equality and fairness was never truly over. There would always be people who sought to control others, who used power for their own gain. But Anna was ready for whatever came next. She would stand her ground for Lily, for their home, for every single person who had ever been silenced by the weight of another's cruelty. As for Lily, life began to return to normal. Her days were filled with laughter and creativity once again. She picked up her sketch pad, the one thing that had always helped her escape the limitations of her wheelchair, and began drawing again with renewed enthusiasm. Anna watched as Lily created worlds on paper, her imagination running wild, unburdened by the events of the past. It was a sight that filled Anna with hope and pride. The incident had, in a strange way, brought them closer together, not just as mother and daughter, but as a team. They had faced adversity head-on and emerged victorious, stronger, and more connected than ever. The bond between them had only deepened, and Anna realized that no matter what obstacles they faced in the future, they would always face them together. And so, as the seasons changed, as the sun set over the driveway that had once been a battleground, Anna and Lily found themselves in a new chapter of their lives. One where their home was safe, their voices were heard, and their hearts were full. The story of the HOA Karen would become a distant memory, one they would look back on as a reminder of their strength, their resilience, and the unwavering love they shared. Because in the end, the greatest victory wasn't in the courtroom. It was in knowing that no matter what, they were free to live their lives unburdened by fear and surrounded by the peace they had fought so hard to protect. Call to action, 200 words. As Anna and Lily embraced the quiet peace that had finally settled in their lives, they knew that the fight for justice was never truly over. The world could be an unforgiving place, full of people who would try to take away your voice, your home, and your dignity. But the most powerful weapon anyone could have was their own courage, the courage to stand up, speak out, and fight for what's right. If you believe in standing up to injustice, if you believe in the power of resilience, don't forget to subscribe to HOA Karen Tales. Stay with us for more stories of strength, survival, and defiance in the face of adversity. Hit the notification bell so you never miss an episode, and join our community in making sure that, no matter what, our voices will always be heard. Together we rise. Together we fight. Join the movement. Subscribe now to HOA Denied Access.